Welcome back to Changing Channels. I'm Rebecca Ballantyne, and I have here with me the illustrious screenwriter, Gary Whitta. Gary, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. It's bright and early here in the States. All of my UK colleagues have been handling it up until almost now. So
You know, I I,
oh,
I wake up in the morning every morning and I need a cup of coffee. I feel like I should just Zoom you though. Like talking to you in the morning is like having 5 cups of coffee because you've always got such high energy and you're a couple of hours ahead of me with the time zone. I feel like I should just have a quick chat with you in the morning, and that's like the little pick me up I need to start my day.
well, I'm happy to help. To our audience, maybe you've heard of Gary Whitta. Maybe you've heard about him from his work on Book of Eli or After Earth or my personal favorite, Rogue One. Or, as I actually learned the other day doing some research to make sure I had all my ducks in a row for this, PC Gamer apparently, before I was aware of games journalism.
Wait, that's the thing you didn't know about me? I was editor-in-chief of PC Gamer for many years, probably before you were even born. My goodness.
That's nonsense. That's not true. I just wasn't aware of the internet at that time. Okay. I was on Neopets, I think, back then or something.
That makes more sense. All right.
I don't know. But anyway, we're not here to talk about any of that. We're here to talk about everyone's favorite talk show in 2020, Animal Talking. In case you're somehow not aware, Animal Talking is a show Gary started in the style of a late night talk show that takes place entirely in Animal Crossing New Horizons, and which he streams on Twitch weekly now, a couple times a week now.
We do it. When we first started doing it, we got a little carried away. We were doing three shows a week. That was right. Nuts. Now we're doing weekly shows.
All right. Okay. And so Gary's had an ever-escalating series of famous guests, including Danny Trejo, Tim Schafer, Elijah Wood, Sting, Shaggy, Brie Larson, Selena Gomez, Corey Barlog, and just last night, I believe, Xbox man Phil Spencer himself. Mm-hmm. Gary, how? I feel like you told me a while back that this was just started as sort of a goof you were doing with some friends when it started, but like how did this get started? What happened here?
Well, first of all, Rebecca, let me say, don't sell yourself short. When you rattle off a list of illustrious guests, you are, of course, among them. You have been a guest on Animal Talking. So
I have been a guest, but I was looking down the guest list on Wikipedia the other day to make sure that I hadn't missed any. And I think I might be your only guest that doesn't have a Wikipedia page.
Oh my goodness! Well, we'll have to fix that.
Maybe Leah, but.
So as to the how of it all, I still really don't know. The whole thing has been just kind of a weird whirlwind. You know, I didn't start out intending to make anything of any note. It was really just a hobby. I've had a Twitch channel for a few years now. I used to play PUBG on it, and nobody really wanted to watch me do that because I'm terrible at it. It was kind of a just chatting stream for a while. It was kind of a Twitch channel in search of an identity. I'm not really like a gaming streamer. I prefer just to play games rather than stream them. But when Animal Crossing came along, I was playing it every day anyway. It was really just, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of this. Animal Crossing just came along at exactly the right time. It's just the tonic that we needed when everyone's kind of locked at home and feeling miserable. And I was playing it every day. It really kind of lifted the spirits in our house. Everyone's been enjoying playing it. It's kind of an escape from, the situation that we're all in right now. And I thought, well, I'm playing it every day. Why not stream it? And I started streaming it every morning, just as a way to kind of start my day. And people were enjoying it. And it kind of accidentally came out of that. I was messing around in my basement in my Animal Crossing house one Saturday morning on stream. People were watching me kind of figure out how to kind of retool my basement and what I wanted to do with that space down there. And I had a desk and a couch, and I just thought, what if I could recreate a talk show set? And that's really all it was. It wasn't like, let's make a talk show. It was just, could I just recreate the set, just like as a model to see how close we could get it with the items that Animal Crossing provided. And it got really close, excuse me. And then what I figured out was, it's really interesting. I thought about this a lot. The American late night talk show is really kind of a cornerstone of American popular culture. It's been around since the 50s, and everyone knows what it looks like, right? Like the visual language of Leno and Letterman and Johnny Carson and Conan, like the desk, the couch, the potted plants in the background, kind of the night, the cityscape, the fake night sky cityscape.
The statue of a raccoon in the corner, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The Wurlitzer jukebox, all of that stuff. That's just been enshrined in our kind of visual, memories for decades now. We all know that the language of, the host comes out, does a monologue, there's a band, there's celebrity guests, there's music, there's comedy. Everyone knows that format. And so in putting together the talk show set, it actually started to kind of take on a recognizable shape very, very quickly. And people were like, oh, I'm getting live feedback from the chat. And people were literally saying, oh my God, it looks so good. Like, you should actually use it. And I thought, well, maybe let's do this for fun. And I called a good friend of mine, an actress and an internet host by the name of Naomi Kyle, who used to work for IGN. And this is literally how I pitched it. I said, do you want to like dress up and play talk show? Like, it was like in the same way that kids would play like having a tea party or something. I said, do you want to like play like talk show guest, talk show host? And so she put on a nice dress in Animal Crossing, came over to my island. I gave her a dodo code. And we just pretended to do a talk show. Oh, Naomi, tell me about your latest projects. And it was just like fun to kind of slip into the tropes of, you know, even those interviews, like, you know, oh, I understand you brought a clip. Tell me about your new book. Like, it's all that kind of stuff that we've seen Leno and Letterman and Kimmel do for decades now. And it was just really fun, and the audience really enjoyed it. And I really enjoyed doing it. It was just a fun way to hang out with people in a virtual space in a way that you can't typically do during the pandemic. I think we're all, you know, present company accepted, of course, but I think we're all kind of sick of looking at each other over Zoom screens. Like, we're trying to find a different way to connect, and bringing people together in the virtual space of Animal Crossing, where, you know, we're really talking over Discord, but it's not our physical selves, it's our Animal Crossing selves on this pretend talk show set. Something about that combination just captured people's imaginations, and people wanted to see more. I was excited about doing it. I wanted to do more with it. And then it became like it also became kind of a bit of a hobby project. Like, how good can we make this? Like, what would we do if we really started like putting a bit of effort from a hobbyist perspective of figuring out how to make the show as good as we can. And so that's what we've been kind of toying around with now for the last few months. We've done 2 seasons of the show so far, and I think it's come a long way. I'm really proud of, you know, what we for like a dumb goofball project. I'm really pleased with how far it's come.
Yeah, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit more about that too, because you were saying how you basically already had all the components like set piece wise. You had the desk, you had the couch, you had the plant, the wallpaper that's like the night, the windows, kind of the night city backdrop looks exactly like what you want it to look like. And then you also, I remember I was watching, I think one of your streams one time, and you were going through your wardrobe, and you have like all these little outfits. You're wearing the suit most of the time, but you have like all these other outfits that could potentially be used. Other people can dress up, or they can like have custom designs that they bring with them. And you hear a lot of people talking about right now, especially during the pandemic, why digital spaces like Fortnite are they're already popular, but they're becoming a place for people to sort of get together and socialize and be sort of physically present together in a way they can't. But there are a lot of things Animal Crossing has that these other games don't, that make it especially well suited for that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, and in many ways, the game is very limiting. Like, you know, Animal Crossing was not built. It was built to be a video game. It was not built to host a talk show. We kind of found a way to shoehorn a talk show into one, and we've come up with all kinds of, you know, clever MacGyver solutions to make the game do the things that we want it to do, even though it doesn't really want to do those things for us. And that's been a fun part of it. But yeah, the weird thing about it is now it's like I've made this comment before, and it's really interesting, particularly now during the pandemic. We are the only talk show in the world that actually looks like one. All the big boys, Kimmel and Colbert and Fallon and Conan, they're all doing their talk shows from their basements because they can't go to their set, right? And everyone's talking over Zoom, and everyone's getting a little bit tired of that. We all look at each other over Zoom all day long, and now we're going to watch like Kimmel interview someone over Zoom. It's only so many things you can do, but the metaverse allows us to do this magic where we can actually put our guests on a real set. With a desk, with a couch, with a band, with the night sky that you mentioned, and all the kind of the trappings and the fixtures and fittings that make it feel like a real late night talk show. And that's the magic of it. This metaverse thing. Like, I'm really starting to understand why it could be so miraculous. You know, we've done shows. One in particular that springs to mind. You know, I'm behind my desk in San Francisco. Adam, who's my on-air sidekick, lives up in Vancouver, and the 2 guests we had on the couch were in Montpellier, France, and Manhattan. That's where they're all calling in from, but we're all sitting in the same virtual space, and that's kind of a magical thing. The idea that it can bring people together in that metaverse without us having to kind of physically go anywhere. And people love that. When we had Selena Gomez on the show, like her people were really excited to have her do it, but they didn't quite understand what it was. Like, it's like, does she have to do hair and makeup? It's like, no, she can do it in her sweatpants. Like, you're not going to see the real her. You're going to see the Animal Crossing version of her. And celebrities get a real kick out of that as well. You know, a lot of the celebrities that we have on the show, like Brie Larson and Danny Trejo and Elijah Wood, they're all Animal Crossing players who bring their own Animal Crossing characters to the set. In the case of Selena or Sting or a celebrity that wants to come on the show, but they don't have their own character, we actually go through a whole process where my wife, Leah, designs and customizes their Animal Crossing character. And we go through, we do wardrobe fittings. You know, the celebrity gets to sign off on the look of the character and they approve what their avatar is going to look like. And they get a real kick out of it. Like, you know, when Selena first saw her Animal Crossing character, she thought it was hilarious. She loved seeing her little virtual self running around her, our set. And so it's a different, you know, it's not a typical talk show. And I think celebrities really get a kick out of doing something that's very different. And B is really easy to do. Like, it's just like calling into a radio show, but then there's this whole other visual aspect.
Did Phil Spencer bring his own character, or did you design one?
He did. Well, I mean, look, Phil, I mean, look, listen, I think Phil, well, I mean, Phil's already playing Animal Crossing, but I think Phil knows that, like, as the head of Xbox, were he to come on the show with someone else playing his character for him, that would not have been a good look for him. Like, he needs to be a legit gamer, right? So he did bring his own character. He even made his own custom Xbox t-shirt, because even though he's inside a Nintendo game, he's got to fly the Xbox flag a little bit, right? So he wore his own Xbox t-shirt, and we talked about it. One of the questions I asked him was, Leo, as someone as someone who's obviously in a leadership position in video games, like, what can we learn from the success of Animal Crossing? Because it's obviously been this phenomenal success, one of the biggest hits Nintendo's ever had in its entire history. And it was really interesting to, the episode just went up on YouTube today. It's really interesting to listen to Phil kind of talk about why, you know, what's the chemistry, what's the DNA of Animal Crossing's success. And he was very complimentary about the way that Nintendo, you know, how they're just masters of this. Like, no one, there's no other company in the world that does it. And he didn't say it, but I would. I mean, I truly believe that Nintendo is the world's one indispensable game company. Like, if Xbox went away, that would be a bummer, but we'd still have PlayStation and vice versa. But if Nintendo goes away, who replaces them? There's no one else like them.
No.
Yeah, no. Absolutely.
So I actually want to back up. I got like very carried away there. As you so you've set up this talk show. You were just doing it for fun. You started saying, okay, how good can we make this? At what point did you realize you had something bigger than just sort of a goofy streaming setup that you were bringing friends on?
Probably around episode 4. And that's all it was meant to be. You know, my friend Naomi was on the first episode. The second episode was literally my wife and her friend. And then the third episode was my friend Kate, who's a pro Twitch streamer. She's actually now Animal Talking stage manager. She does a lot of work behind the scenes on the show. But at that point, I was still just like calling up just random friends and going, hey, do you want to come on the show and goof around? Episode 4, people were starting to notice that what we were doing was cool. Twitch put us on the front page. And we got a massive audience. And it got a lot of attention. And then we started to get the mainstream media coverage, Variety and Hollywood Reporter and Entertainment Weekly and Newsweek and Washington Post and The Verge called us 2020's hottest talk show. Like, it suddenly like started to blow up very quickly. And then it kind of becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Now people start coming to us. And they want to be on the show because they see it as something fun and cool to do. And that was the point where we started to get like actual celebrity guests like T-Pain, like Elijah Wood, like Danny, and it really started to kind of take off from there. And like I said, it continued to snowball. Like the first few episodes, I was reaching out to everyone. Now, I would say probably more than half of the guests that we've had on the show in season 2, like in terms of big celebrity guests, were people that approached us. And that's kind of like, they want to do the show. Like, you would think getting Brie Larson or like any talk show, I don't care who you are, any talk show, you know, is going to struggle to book a celebrity as big as Brie Larson or Selena Gomez, but they came, like, they really wanted to do it. And they had a blast doing it. I always say to my guests, like, I don't promise you nothing's going to go wrong, because, you know, this whole show is held together with shoestring and duct tape. It's not a professional production. It's basically Wayne's World. But that's kind of the charm of it. People love that. They love that it's very, you know, it's kind of this amateurish production. And I think the celebrities get a kick out of that as well. They don't look upon doing this show as like a promotional chore. Like, oh, I got to go on these. I got to go, do the promotional rounds for my new album or my new book or whatever. Like they want to do it because it's so funny and it's so silly. And even when we've had celebrities that have like, kind of like, I don't get it. What is it? I said, well, watch this video, and I send them an episode. And like the next day they come back and they're like, oh my God, I'm in. Like once they see what it is, they want to do it.
Have you had to adapt your show over time to kind of accommodate its increasing popularity and the increasing like level of celebrity of the guests? I remember when I was on, you had basically just booked Sting, and
right.
That seemed to be like a challenging level of fame to deal with, perhaps.
There's a little bit more preparation work in terms of, some, and not in all cases, but in some cases, that when you're dealing with those big celebrities, they do come with all their handlers and publicists, and they've got a lot of questions. And particularly when we have musical guests on the show, there's a whole other issue with copyright clearances on their music. That's probably been my biggest headache. Is like Sting will come on our show and perform a song, and we obviously have his full permission to play it because like it's him performing it himself. And yet when we upload the episode to YouTube's algorithm immediately whacks us with a copyright claim, and I have to go get that cleared. And dealing with record labels and copyright issues, and again, a lot of people at these big record labels don't understand what the show is. They're like, well, what's your budget for music? I'm like, budget? Would you like me to show you a picture of the room where I do this show from, and you can figure out what the budget is? Because it's nothing. Like, we don't spend any money on this show. Like, it's me and 3 volunteers who I don't pay anything. I've offered, they won't take my money, but like, there's no, and the show doesn't make any money. It makes literally a few $100 on the back end of like Twitch subscriptions and YouTube monetization and stuff like that. But like, this is not a for-profit enterprise. I have a full-time job already. This is just a hobby that kind of spiraled wildly out of control. And I think sometimes like the celebrities get it right away. They want to do it, but like the record labels and the publicists don't quite understand why why their client would want to go on a show that is actually like Wayne's World. Like, not the Wayne's World that's on SNL, which is a big thing, but like, imagine if Wayne's World were real and it was just 2 dopes like actually doing it out of their basement, but real celebrities wanted to go on it. That was the joke of Wayne's World, right? Is that Wayne and Garth were getting these big celebrities to come on their dumb show. That's actually happening on our show. This is a dumb show that I literally do out of my basement. I'm sitting here, right? This is where I do the show from. But we're getting Brie Larson and Selena Gomez and Sting and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's supposed to be coming on in September. We're still trying to nail down a date. Like and here's the thing, that now it's become much easier because once you've had Selena Gomez on your show, once you've had Sting, once you've had T-Pain or Brie Larson, then it's that much easier to sell the next. It's like, well, it's good enough for them. You're telling me it's not good enough for you? Like, then they want to do it because every time we get a big celebrity guest on the show, it just kind of legitimizes it more, I guess.
Right, for sure. You mentioned earlier that you were that Animal Crossing was both freeing in some ways in terms of the sort of variety of things that it offered you, and like set pieces and things like that, but it was also limiting. Can you talk a little bit more about what those limitations are in terms of like what things may have kept you from doing things with the show that you would have wanted to do otherwise? Yeah,
it's been very much a double-edged sword. We're tremendously grateful for Animal Crossing, and I should point out that without Animal Crossing, the show wouldn't be what it is. First of all, it wouldn't exist because I wouldn't have built this idea in any other game. But also the fact that Animal Crossing was already a cultural phenomenon was what allowed us to kind of piggyback off the back of it. It's like Animal Crossing is already having a cultural moment. We do something interesting with it, like build a talk show within, and that's the sort of story that the media can very easily get their head around. Like, somebody does something cool inside this game that everyone's talking about. That's an easy story to sell. And so that helped us go viral. In terms of the actual practical putting the show together, it's really been, like I said, a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it's been wonderful. Like, everything that we wanted is there. The TV cameras, the studio lights, that wallpaper that you mentioned that makes it look just like a talk show set. The plants, and the drum kit, the keyboards, everything that makes it look like a talk show. We have, and again, we haven't hacked or modified or cheated anything. That's all. Anyone could build my set. It's all just stuff that you can find and acquire in the game. What made it slightly easier for us is because I was streaming it to an audience. We kind of crowdsourced a lot of stuff. Like, people would say, "Oh, what would look great on your set? A drum kit." And then the next thing you know, someone sent me a drum kit in the mail, and I can add. There was kind of a community effort in sourcing the items that we need it. But like the building the actual set was pretty easy. Like the set doesn't look that different today than it did like by episode 3 or 4. Like the basic items that we move things around sometimes, but the basic items that we needed were there very, very early. So that's not evolved very much. The limitations, though, have become very restricting, and it's been fun to find ways around it, like trying to get the camera to do what we want it to do, trying to get the lighting to do what we want it to do. The camera only pivots around me. So when I want the camera to be somewhere else on the set, like literally, I'll give you an example of like a dumb solution. When we have a musical artist perform, I want the camera to be on them, but I can't sit behind the desk while they're performing because the camera is pivoted around me as the central point, as the player character. So I can't get the camera to go where I need it to go. And so I would literally go hide behind a fern and like lurk there. And that would enable me to kind of be out of the image because I'm obscured behind something, but still have the camera on the area of the stage that I want. That's now become easier because Nintendo has updated in the most recent update the camera mode where you can actually put the camera anywhere you want. We weren't using that prior to that because there was a whole HUD on the camera mode that was not pleasing to the eye. They've now finally added an update that lets you take that off. So I can now set the camera anywhere that I want on the set, press a button and kind of lock the camera there and make it look really good. But like the online functionality is a big hassle, like getting people on and off the island is a really slow process. It's not seamless. As you know, when someone flies to your island or leaves it, there's a whole like 60-second cutaway. So basically when we do the show, we have to have everyone on the show has to be like front loaded, preloaded onto the island before we go live, because we can't do the flights in and off the island during the show. It interrupts the show. So we have to get everyone onto the island. We have to instruct all of our guests different certain things, like all of our guests get like a document from us that says, here's all the things you need to do before you go on the show. One of them is go into your Nintendo Switch system settings and change your Switch settings. I think I remember telling you this, Rebecca, like make sure your Switch never goes to sleep, because sometimes what happens is guests sit with us on the couch and they put their Switch down and they forget to interact with it. But if you don't interact with the Switch for 5 minutes, it goes to sleep. And when that happens, it kicks everyone off the set because it kind of ends the session and we all have to run back to the set. So now there's a whole process we go through doing like 30 episodes of the show or however many it is that we've done now. We've gotten very good at anticipating all the different things that can go wrong. I've had at least 3 guests, whose Switch battery ran out halfway through their interview and we lost them and I couldn't get them back. Like you'd be amazed the things that can go wrong. Nintendo recently just decided that they're going to start doing scheduled maintenance on their server infrastructure on the very hour and day that we do our regular show. So now I have to move the show to a different day to avoid their network maintenance. Yeah, I'm not sure if they're deliberately trolling me or not, but you know, it's like the show typically goes out Wednesday nights at 7:00 Pacific. Nintendo is now doing Animal Crossing server maintenance every week at Wednesday night, 7:00 Pacific. So now I've got to move the show to a different night to avoid, because otherwise I can't go live with the show. There's no online back end to get guests onto my island. So we're constantly kind of pushing up against the restraints and the limitations of the game. Certainly, the game has allowed us to do wonderful things. The fact that we can even do what we can do is a testament to the amazing thing that Nintendo built in allowing us to recreate a talk show set and essentially, you know, make the show basically works. But we long since passed the point where my ambition for what I would like the show to be has exceeded what's possible inside, you know, the Animal Crossing world. I can't, you know, we live with the world that Animal Crossing gives us. I can't change it or modify it in any way. We have musical guests on the show. Lisa Loeb was on the show last night playing guitar live, but her character's not holding a guitar on the screen because the game won't let you do that. And so like musical acts are tricky because we can stand someone behind a keyboard. I can stand someone behind a drum kit and they can kind of mash away at it. But when we've got a guitarist or a saxophone player or a violinist, all of whom we've had on the show, they can't hold their instrument because the game just doesn't accommodate that. If I had trust me, I've got a very long wish list that I would love to send to Nintendo and say, hey, listen, if you give a shit about me making a talk show, please let me do these things. I mean, obviously they don't. They're kind of happy for me to do it, but like they're not going to go out of their way to like make my life easier. I just hope that every time they push a new update, like with the change to the camera display, every now and again they just happen to do something that is a big help to us. The camera thing was great. Like the next one would like, please let me have characters hold objects, because I would love to be able to have my musical guests hold the instrument that you can hear them playing. So, things like that.
Yeah. Do you know how Nintendo feels about this? Surely they're aware.
I mean, I know I only know that they must not be that bothered about it, because I mean, yeah, look, we had Selena Gomez on the show last week. They know. How can they not? And honestly, for a while, I was really worried that Nintendo would not be thrilled about it, because the occasional F-bomb slips through, and the show is mostly
you said a very particular phrase to Phil Spencer last night.
I did, and that got a big laugh. Yeah, calling Phil Spencer a son of a bitch live on air was he took it in the right spirit. Again, when you come like people who know the show, I always say, like, I'm gonna goof around with you, just know that, like, I'm gonna rib you, we're gonna have fun, like, and Phil was a great sport, and he totally went along with the spirit of it. But yeah, so when we had T-Pain on the show, I mean, he was all out. I mean, it was delightful, but my goodness, the next day I was convinced we were going to get the cease and desist from Nintendo. That hasn't happened. I think, yes, obviously they're aware of it, because it has become a big deal. Nintendo typically in the past has been a bit prickly about people, doing things with their platform. Even just simple stuff like people streaming their game. One of the reasons we don't have any corporate sponsorship on the show, and believe me, I've had plenty of people approach me, is I don't want to do it. I don't need the money. I have a full-time job. And as soon as it becomes, hey, this is Animal Crossing brought to you by Doritos, it's over. Right? then the fun, we're doing this for a goof, goes away. But also because I think Nintendo would come down on us like a ton of bricks if we ever did that. As soon as we actually started like actively monetizing the show and slapping brands over their platform, I think they would have a real issue with that. So we're never going to go in that direction. But yeah, so far, as far as I know, I haven't had much direct contact with Nintendo. But from what I know is they're amused by it. They think it's cool, and they'll continue to let us do it until they decide not to, and I hope that continues.
Yeah, hope so. What about Animal Talking? We've definitely touched on this already, but very specifically, like, what about Animal Talking do you feel is so appealing to so many people? Like, what about it being set in this cutesy, cozy video game helps elevate it above just sort of sitting in a room doing live interviews, even in the best possible conditions?
I mean, I've thought about this a lot, like like the chemistry of virality, and I really think it is when you. I think, first of all, I think if you ever intend to set out to make viral content, you'll always fail. Like all the true viral content is stuff that you just kind of fall ass backwards into, like this. Like I was not building that talk show set going, oh, this is going to go viral. I've hit the viral formula here. I was just trying to goof around, and I think that authenticity is key to it. Like look at what somebody did for fun, and like everyone can kind of relate to that. But in thinking about it in retrospect, because I've had a lot of people ask me this question, I think it's a combination. If you take something that's very familiar and is safe, and people can easily get their head around it, the American late night talk show, like you instantly know what that looks like, right? Americans have been falling asleep at night in front of the TV since 1954, watching a host in a suit behind a desk interview celebrities about their new book, right? And doing comedy. Like we all know that format. It's so familiar to us, and we're very as Americans in particular, we're very comfortable with it. But then you take that and you find a way to present it in a new way. Well, now we're doing it inside a video game. So take something that everyone's familiar with and comfortable with, present it in a new way, and you've got hopefully just the right combination of the familiar and the new. If you do something completely radical and new, people might go, oh, I don't know what this is. That's scary to me. If you just do another late night talk show on TV, no one's going to care. I've had people say to me, oh, you should put Animal Crossing on Animal Talking on TV. I'm like, but then it would just be another talk show. Like that you would lose all the things that make it what it is. So yeah, I think we just stumbled onto just the right combination of the familiar and the innovative that people responded to. And again, I think people really respond to just because of the whimsical nature of it. We just really have a lot of fun on the show. We've had great moments of kind of unintentional viral comedy. Our guests all get into the real key. We've just been really lucky with guests. We've never had a single bad guest. Like, we all, myself and the production volunteers, all kind of meet after the show in Discord and kind of talk about how the show went. And we've done 30 something shows now, and I've never once had a conversation where we're like, oh, that guest was rough. Like, it's never happened. Like, the worst guest that we've ever had on the show was merely very good, and our best ones are, and our best ones have been absolutely spectacular. And so, everyone gets into the right spirit, and I'm very protective of the show in that way. Like, again, I've been approached by publicists and labels and people that want to put their guest on the show, and they're like, well, what are your metrics? What are your numbers? What are your demographics? Like, how big of an audience are we going to reach? And I'm very honest. I say, look, if that's what you're concerned about, don't bring your guest on the show, because they're not the right fit. If you're doing this because you think that this is going to get you in front of a particular young, attractive demographic, because we're on Twitch, then forget about it. If your guest needs in any way to have this show explained to them, why it's cool, or have their arm twisted to come on it, I don't want them on the show, because the interview's not going to go well. Like Brie Larson was the perfect example. Like, she could barely get through the interview because she was so tickled by the idea of doing a talk show inside Animal Crossing, this game that she loves so much, that she was just cracking up the whole time. And that's the energy that we want, like people that inherently understand why this is a fun and cool thing to do. We cut together a little 90-second trailer now that we send to people that don't know what the show is. So like in 90 seconds, you'll either get it or you don't. Here's what the show is. And most people do. And for those people that don't understand it, we'll just move on to the next guest. It's like, I don't care how big a celebrity you are. If you're coming on the show in a cynical way, it's not gonna be good for the show. It's not gonna be good for you. Again, like Phil did it just because he wanted to do it last night. Like, he didn't see it as he can go on any outlet and get promotion, right? It's Phil Spencer, the head of Xbox. Anywhere that he goes, people are going to tune in, because especially on the cusp of a new generation, people want to hear what he's talking about. He chose to come on our show on a rival platform just because it was fun and because it was cool. And he took the whole thing in good humor. We joked around. He talked very frankly about, the Halo delay and stuff like that. Full credit to Phil, by the way. That Halo Infinite news dropped the day before he came on the show. They very easily could have delayed that announcement so that it was like the day after he appeared on the show, and he would have dodged it. Or they could have pulled him from the show altogether, but he didn't. He went through with it. He answered a bunch of questions about the Halo delay. He talked about it very frankly, and it worked out great. And so I just want to say I really admire Phil for, it was obviously a very difficult week for Phil and for Microsoft this week. And yet he still showed up in a Nintendo game, inside a Nintendo game, and talked about it. And I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Absolutely. All right. I've got one more question for you, and then there's actually several questions in chat I'm going to throw at you too. So you said at the beginning that at the beginning, there wasn't really a goal. It was just for fun. And then it became, how do we make this as good a show as possible? What's the goal now that you have this? I mean, you have it pretty much set. It's a thing now. Like, do you want to grow it? What do you want to do?
I don't know. It's very interesting that you and I should be talking about this today, because I feel like we are a little bit of an inflection point. We did 15 episodes in season 1. That almost killed me. We've done 8 so far now in season 2. And I think I'm at a point where I'm going to take a little bit of a hiatus from it. Like, in terms of weekly shows for the rest of the year, I might be done, because it's so... Like, the 2 or 3 hours that I'm actually doing the show, I love it. When we're actually on air and I'm talking with our guests and having fun, I love it. But the 15 to 20 hours that I have to put in, before that, to get the show on the air with sound checks and pre-interviews and animation and technical issues and booking the guests and clearing music, that's not fun for me. And I always said that if I ever got to a point where the show was more stress than it was fun to do, I would stop doing it. And we're like kind of right at that point right now where it's like 50 stress and fun. And I don't want that equation to ever fall out of balance. So I think for the rest of the year right now, we're gonna do a big Halloween special where some of our favorite guests come back. We'll do episodes as and when required. Like, again, we've been talking to AOC for a while about doing coming on in September. If she wants to do a show in September, we're doing a show in September. But the idea of saying this is our weekly schedule and we have to like plug 3 guests into it every week, I just don't. I'm getting, like, my actual day job, I'm getting busy with like real projects. I just don't have the time anymore. So Animal Talking will continue through the end of the year, but probably on a less regular basis. and then we'll see where we are after that. I don't know if it can last forever. Animal Crossing is not going to be in the zeitgeist forever. It's super popular right now, but it's not going to be the coolest game forever. My appetite for doing the show hasn't waned. I still really enjoy doing it. I just need to find a way to do it that doesn't stress me out and kill me every week. And also, you get to a point where it's like, I get bored really quickly. Like, rather than do like season 8 of Animal Talking, I'm more likely to be thinking like, what's the next thing? Like, what's the next original idea that I can have? And I've already got a couple of ideas. Like, what's the next thing where you can go, oh, you haven't seen this before. Like another season of Animal Talking, people go, oh, I go, yeah, I saw that coming. But like, here's something completely new and different that you didn't see coming is more interesting to try and find that. So yeah, Animal Talking will continue in the short term on a less regular basis. In the long term, I really have no idea what's going to happen with it.
We actually have quite a few questions in chat, so we'll try to burn through them in the next 10 minutes.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm going to try it on names. From Cy Andrews, question for Gary. Love your work, by the way. Any suggestions or guidance for low-level script writers after creating initial drafts of TV/film scripts? How does he refine and improve his own work?
Geez, it's really, really hard. I think, find a trust. I'm very lucky in that I have a group of people around me, my managers and my reps, who will look at my early drafts and give me notes and things like that. In the absence of that, find trusted readers. I'll give you a couple of pieces of advice. First of all, there's always a bit of a honeymoon kind of afterglow right after you finish a script, where like you're never going to be more in love with your own script than right after you finish it. So don't allow that to be how you, because I guarantee you it's got all kinds of problems. I guarantee you your first draft has all kinds of problems, whether you see them or not. Put it in a drawer and walk away for 6 weeks. And come back and look at it then after you've had enough time away from it to actually get some critical distance, look at it more objectively. And then find trusted readers, find people that you trust to read and give feedback. And don't be afraid of the reality, because it is the reality that your first draft's probably going to need a lot of work.
That's good advice. From Elise Moberly, you've been involved in games, comics, film, and now the successful Animal Crossing show. How have you been able to move into new spaces throughout your career successfully?
Some of that's by necessity. My main job is as a screenwriter in film, and film is by far the hardest medium, I think, to get your creative work realized. Like, I write a script, but that's not the finished product. That's just the blueprint for the finished product. I then have to hundreds of other people have to come along and spend many millions of dollars to make that into a finished film. And by the time it's gone through that process, either you're fired, or the movie doesn't get made, or the movie that ends up on screen is nothing like the movie that you originally wrote. I've had all of those experiences. And that can often be like really, really heartbreaking and hard to deal with. The reason why I migrated into doing books and comics is it was just easier to get my story in front of an audience. That's all I care about. I love film. If I can get my idea made as a film, I'm gonna do that. But oftentimes, when I've got an idea that I know is not necessarily commercial enough, that there's going to be a big appetite to make it as a big budget movie, I'll find some other way to do it. I'll do it as a comic book. I'll do it as a novel. And then of course with Animal Talking, that wasn't a deliberate thing at all. That was just literally me being bored during the lockdown and looking for something to amuse myself, and it kind of blew up by accident.
From Dave Rosen, it's very hard for artists right now financially. Is writing/performing in virtual spaces viable financially?
Not for me. Again, if Animal Talking were my job, if that were my sole means of income, I'd be broke, because it doesn't make any money. A little bit, it's pocket money, but it's not enough money to live on. Like, I'm not Shroud. At the higher levels of streaming, yeah, there's real money to be made. But I'm not at anything like that level. Like, Animal Talking has put up big numbers when Twitch has put us on the front page and we've had big stars. But for the most part, we're still a very small show. Like, my YouTube channel, where we post the links, only has about 25,000 subscribers. And like, a lot of the comments that we get are like, why doesn't this have more views? Why haven't more people discovered this? I've sunk a little bit of money into doing kind of YouTube ads and things like that, trying to promote the show and get more people to discover it. A lot of that discovery obviously is organic through, the viral uptake that we've seen. But, it's funny that Animal Talking is not that huge a deal. Like again, having someone like Selena Gomez or whatever is a huge deal, but like it's not like our YouTube videos are getting millions of views or anything. It's still a very niche show. Maybe that's part of the appeal. Like it's not. I think the biggest episode we ever did has about 100,000 views on YouTube, which is not nothing, but it's not quit your job money either.
Which one was that?
That was Danny and Elijah. And then
that's a power combo.
It's going to get overtaken though by the Selena Gomez episode. It's going to overtake it because it's she's unstoppable.
Yeah, streaming is like that though. There's very much a top group of people who are making lots of money, who are making far more than a living off of it, and then
a big drop off. Yeah, and everyone else. But I mean, I know plenty of streamers who, they're full time streamers, and they do get by. They they're not rich or anything, but it's their living. They make money. You've got to find way. You can't just be the back end like subscriptions and stuff like that and YouTube monetization. The people that I know that make a living at it do everything. They do Patreon, like they have all the they do sponsorships, and they find ways to make the numbers add up. But it's exhausting. It's a lot of work trying to find a way to make a living in the streaming game. Like I said, I've got a concept. I've got a show that is very popular and very viral, and everyone's talking about it, but it still doesn't make any money. I mean, I'm not going to go into specific numbers, but I'll just tell you right now, like I've been doing Animal Talking. We started doing it at the end of April. What is it now? Mid-August. I've probably made about $2,000 off of it from YouTube and Twitch. Like not much at all. Like that doesn't even pay my mortgage for 1 month.
Right. Has Gary ever had to? Oh, sorry. This is from Megan Gauthier. Has Gary ever had to decline someone from the show, and why?
The only time I ever did that was, and I won't say who the guest was. It's not someone who's been on the show. The only time we ever did that was their publicist. It was someone who was had a film studio project, and the studio wanted me to submit the questions in advance for their approval. And I said, let's just not do it then, because again, we're not that kind of show. Like I do have show notes, but like by the time and I have questions that I want to ask. But by the time we actually are on air, like the interview goes off the rails almost immediately, because that's the fun of the show. Is like we just go where the interview takes us. And if you need me to stick to a set of like pre-scripted talking points and approved questions, again, I go back to what I said earlier. You're not the right guest for the show if that's how you want to do. Like go on another show where they will do that. We won't do that here, because as soon as it just becomes about hitting like a bunch of like, oh, I've got to talk about this, got to talk about that, can't talk about this. I do always, as a courtesy, ask our guests, is there anything you particularly want to talk about or anything you want to avoid? Like I'm respectful in that regard, but if it's like a studio or a publicist saying, here's what you have to ask about, here's what you cannot ask about, and we want to see the questions in advance, I'll just pull it.
Yeah, you're not doing free PR for people. That's not what it is.
Well, I mean, we kind of are. Like I always say, like, I'll fulfill like the talk show social contracts. If you come to our show and you've got like a book you want to promote, I'll happily talk to you about it. But I won't do it as like a condition of you coming on the show.
Right. From Rod Caballero, were your multidisciplinary forages into film, games, comics, etc., a calculated career move, or did you, quote, fall into it? Do you think this is a viable career for other aspiring writers?
Well, I mean, I feel like I kind of semi-answered that one earlier when, it's like I kind of struggle. Like I said, film is a struggle. Books and comics and things like that ended up being like just a less steep hill to climb. Still steep. They're all steep. Nothing's easy, but nothing's steeper than film. I can point to two projects that I've had made, Oliver, which is my steampunk comic, and Abomination, which is like my medieval horror novel. Like both of those would never have been made as a film, because they're just the concepts aren't commercial enough. But I creatively really wanted to tell those stories, and I thought, well, like if it can't be told as a film, rather than just give up, maybe there's some other medium in which I'd be equally satisfied for that story to find an audience in. We published the horror thing as a book, and the comics out right now from Image Comics, and it found an audience. And of course, the irony is once you publish it as a book or as a comic, it becomes a piece of underlying IP. And then Hollywood do want to, oh, can we adapt this? I'm like, where were you 2 years ago when I was trying to sell this to you as a movie? Now it's a comic book, you want to make it. But that's just the nature of the business. Hollywood's a very risk-averse business, and a very secondary business as well. Like Hollywood's not really in the business anymore, unless you're like Chris Nolan or something, of really generating kind of big original ideas, inherently within film. They wait for someone else to have a hit in another medium, and then they'll adapt it for film because they expose themselves to less risk.
All All right, got one more question from Cy Andrews again. What software do you use for your work? Final Draft? Just started using Writer's Solo, which seems great so far.
I don't personally use Final Draft. It's very expensive, poorly supported, and buggy. And I've never had I've never enjoyed using it. I used it for years because the Final Draft marketing people have done a very good job of perpetuating the notion that Final Draft is in somehow the industry standard. And in many ways, it is. When I submit a script, the studios usually ask for a Final Draft version because their workflow is built into it. But I don't use it. I use a program on Mac called Highland 2, and I use another one called Fade In. And both of those are much cheaper and better supported pieces of software that I enjoy writing my scripts in much more. And then if the studio wants a Final Draft file at the end, both of those programs will just output one. They will just export to Final Draft. So I'll send you a Final Draft file, but I don't need to touch that software.
That is time for us. Gary, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us. It's been an honor and a delight. Do you want to plug Animal Talking really quick? How can people find that?
So again, the live shows are going to be going out on a less regular basis right now, but I do stream other things on my channel. I'm playing a lot of Fall Guys Ultimate Knockout right now on my Twitch channel. Oh my God, I love that. Rebecca, we got to get together and play. It's so much fun. We'll squad up. We'll squad up. Twitch.tv/Gary Whitta. And then what I'm really trying to push right now is the YouTube channel, youtube.com/GWhitta. That's the home of Animal Talking on the web. All of our episodes are archived there, full episodes, clips, highlights, and other things as well. We're really trying to grow that channel. Please go to youtube.com/GWhitta, GWHITTA, and give us a sub, and then you'll be notified as new episodes of the show go live.
Awesome. Definitely go do that, and check back in on this channel here in about 15 minutes for our next panel, Making TV and Film with Games Technology, where Ben Lumsden from Epic Games will talk about how Epic's technology is being used to create the special effects for high-budget TV and film productions, including Disney's Star Wars series, The Mandalorian.